Kolbecast, episode 214. Thank you for joining us. Today, Bonnie and I are joined by Charlie and Dee-Dee Mihaliak. Homeschooling is a journey that takes on many paths, so it is often beneficial to see how another family has run the race. And Charlie and Dee-Dee have certainly run the race well. As they discussed their own journey, it became clear that there was an emphasis on setting priorities and the importance of family and community for success. Also, after reflecting on the conversation, it seemed to me that some of the experience that they shared could have been seen as real burdens at the time, but Charlie and Dee-Dee clearly viewed them as important blessings for their family. We hope that you'll enjoy the show.
Hi there, I'm Bonnie, Kolbe homeschooling mom of 4 lads and lasses, liturgical musician, popcorn, and podcast fanatic.
And this is Stephen, homeschooling father of 5 and chief homeschooling officer for Kolbe Academy.
Hi, Stephen. I hope your week's off to a good start. How are things going for you?
Things are going very well. It's happening during graduation week that we're recording. So not only do I get to go down for my son's graduation, but I get to see the son of our guests here today, which should be fun.
Yes, that's right. It's a big week here for us here at Kolbe, and a fun intersection of future and current recordings happening. So our guests today are Mr. and Mrs. Charlie and Dee-Dee Mihaliak. Welcome to the Kolbecast.
Thank you.
Glad to be here. Congratulations, Stephen.
Thank you.
We are very happy to get to visit with you. If the name sounds familiar to our listeners, that's because we've had the great pleasure of visiting with two other Mihaliaks on the Kolbecast throughout the existence of this podcast. Charlie, who is the son of our guest today. And then we also have visited with Dolores Mihaliak, who teaches for Kolbe and is a Kolbe alumna herself. So we're always glad to get to visit with the Mihaliaks and so glad to get to visit with you guys today. We would love to hear about you and your Kolbe connection.
Well, we're really grateful for having been invited to talk or to share our incredible experiences with Kolbe, because we have had such a wonderful experience over the years. And I think we've been with Kolbe since 1998, if that's possible. And does that make sense? Yeah. For all 5 of our children, for all of their years of homeschooling. And that was through high school. So we're obviously big fans. And when you measure the success and whether or not your children still have the faith and are really strong in the faith and can communicate with each other and talk to each other about the faith, that's just, Kolbe's got 5 stars.
Yeah, I was just, I think Charlie, my son, I think might have been in the first class that had the graduation down in Atlanta. I can remember Charlie and John and I flying down in the morning and going to the graduation there at Georgia Tech, right? And then eat at the varsity and flying home that night. But one of the things that struck me, what Charlie said, was just how close he'd become to the students that he was with, right? Like he went down there because these people who he had never seen in real life had become really close friends of his online as he went through his classes with them through all those years, which I thought was amazing and and a little bit odd considering the fact that they never had a chance to meet each other until graduation day. And I think that's also just a tribute to what Kolbe does, to be able to build that community and those friendships, even if it's virtual like that.
But what's kind of interesting is that our first child went through using the paper Kolbe curriculum. So we've done everything from the paper curriculum through most of high school being online and through online classes for the last, our youngest children. But the quality of the education was just like standard throughout, from our first daughter, who ended up being and I only say this because some people measure success differently, and those who measure it by success academically, then our first child through, who had done all the paper curriculum, ended up being valedictorian at UD in her class by the time she graduated. So and then the last one through was John, who did all of high school really online. And again, hitting the ground running once they hit college because of the intense expectations, I believe, with regard to writing and also the excellent book list. I mean, it is just a fantastic book list. If people do nothing other than use your recommended reading list, I mean, it's wonderful.
That's one of the things that, we're relatively new to Kolbe, 3 years or so, but we've been homeschooling all of my children, my 5 children, throughout all of their years. But that really strikes me with Kolbe. I mean, it's like a college program in those high school years. The build up to that is wonderful as well. But I'm just whenever I go to one of these graduations, this will be my third that I've gone to. It's like I can't believe they're high school students. They speak like college graduates more than high school students. I'm always blown away.
It is hard. I mean, I think that's, I mean, not impossible, but it is challenging. That's one of the things I think we both and everyone actually appreciated for it, right? But and I just think also kind of the fact that it was a classical perspective to the whole education from ancient civilizations all the way through the way it did humanities, sciences, math. It just in addition to being appropriately challenging, I thought it was just right on point in terms of the content. And yeah, like Dee Dee said, as the kids have gotten out of high school and went on to college, they've demonstrated to be good writers. They've been demonstrated to be, well-adjusted people that can, make their way independently at school and have done well academically. It is just it's been a great preparatory program for all of our kids.
And it's funny when for a mother and the person who's at a home doing the most of the homeschooling and overseeing it in our situation, it's really rewarding when when your eighth grader comes to you and says, "Mom, I'm doing history, but it feels like I've read all of this before, and they're making the same mistakes in world history as they did before." And I'm like, there you go.
Mm-hmm.
That's why you're doing this kind of curriculum. And the dinner conversations when all the kids are home and they've all read, they're so well read by the time they finish with Kolbe, that the dinner conversations as parents, you just sit back and you're like, wow, this is great. This is just so beautiful to listen to this. And it's really home is one that's falling apart and written all over. And the kids would fight over who's going to get Dante's Inferno because everybody's got all of their notes in the same book.
Oh,
And
neat.
it's just fantastic. When they go to college, they're like, "Oh, I need that book. I need everybody's thoughts about this." It's really nice. It's just it's very rewarding to see that because parenting is not always immediate. You can't see the results immediately sometimes.
Yeah. You might not have foreseen that heading out when you've started out at the beginning.
Oh, when we started homeschooling, we were total education snobs. Like we thought, okay, well, we're going to buy, 6 logic programs and teach our kids Latin and 3 other languages by the time they're in second grade, and we're going to do this and we're going to do that. We quickly changed because of the people that God placed in our circle, which we were so blessed. We were placed with people who were really trying to live the faith, and we had never met people like that before. And it changed from us wanting academic excellence, and that's the sole reason for doing the homeschooling, to we want academic excellence, but the most important thing is faithfulness and learning about the faith and being true to the faith and seeking truth. It was just every year we said, we're going to reevaluate every year and ask ourselves the question for each child, is this the right choice? And we did. And then one year we just forgot to ask that question because it becomes a lifestyle. And then we just never asked it again because you would never think of doing something else once you get into the rhythm and the beauty of teaching your children the rhythm of home life along with excellent academics.
Yeah, I think they're always. I'm always a big fan of kind of like what's the first principles are related to a big decision that you make, and how do your kids get educated is about as big a decision as you're going to make as a parent. And And as we talked about it, we kind of circled around the point that we thought a faith-based education was something that had to be kind of primary to how they learned. And in a public school in today's days, or even back, when our kids went into pre or kindergarten or first grade, by definition, a public school cannot provide a faith-based education, and so it kind of took us out of that realm just because of that. And then it kind of got into, well, there's plenty of parochial schools around. There's private schools. There's the church schools, and we were going down that road. And we ultimately ended up with a job transfer of mine, moving to Richmond, Virginia. We landed in Richmond in the summer of, I think, 98, 99. And when we did, all of the parochial schools were full. And so, if your first principle is faith-based education, and the public schools are out by definition and the parochial schools are full, that kind of said, well, we never really thought we were going to jump into homeschooling, but it kind of, in some ways, well, this is what we're going to try. And, it was just remarkable, kind of the resources that were available to help teach your kids, and B, the people we met, right? Like the people along the way that we met in Richmond, that we met when we moved to Northern Virginia, that we met when we moved here to Connecticut. And the richness of our friends, the kids' friends, of our friends, has just made all the difference. There's things in my life I would do differently, but in terms of that decision, I think that's one that I feel really good about. I'm sure I think we both do.
Mm-hmm.
How did you come to learn about Kolbe then? Was that through the folks you met when you moved?
I started exploring. We tried some other programs. One of the programs was very much like kind of Catholic school at home. And even in kindergarten, it was like 1 + 1 nun + 1 nun equals how many nuns? I'm like, yeah, that it just wasn't us. And it was also incredibly rigid. Like I was looking for the flexibility of homeschooling too. So if I couldn't turn a spelling test in on Friday, I didn't want to have to sweat that in grade 2, or a kindergarten. And then other programs seem to take the reading list. One other in particular that we were looking at seemed to take the Kolbe reading list and just suggest it for like 2 years younger, and thereby saying this was the hardest and the most challenging. But the philosophy behind it was flawed. It was not appropriate, challenging reading for the age group. And you could see that pretty quick. So we looked at 1 or 2 other programs. Once we found Kolbe, because we just did a lot of exploring. Once we found Kolbe, it just fits so beautifully. We did Kolbe in the younger grades. We used the curriculum, but I didn't believe in grading children at an early age, because I felt like no one's going to go on to the next topic until we master this one. So why would I grade you? It's until 7th, 8th grade and getting into high school, we just conquered the material, and they conquered it at their own pace. And every child's different. And the boys, they have to get up and run around every 20 minutes. So, they go at a different pace learning, but then when they sit down to learn a subject, they could, absorb it very quickly. But, every child is different. So
the other part of it, as the kids got into the upper part of grade school, we satisfied Kolbe's requirements for the grade. And then in Virginia, you had to be evaluated. There was a part of the regulations, or whatever, in Virginia, your kids had to be evaluated annually by an evaluator to make sure they're making sufficient progress. And the evaluator always evaluated them that they were doing well. So I mean, we were making the appropriate progress throughout.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I just meant that I wasn't, we used the paper curriculum for the younger grades, and we did it, but we did absolutely cover everything, and many of the subjects they covered quicker. But
and then when our oldest 2 were getting through high school, right, there would be the frantic search for the deliverables so we could send it in to Kolbe in time to get credit. And there was more than a few bad words probably said, reading through boxes trying to find that stuff. But we found it all. There, a couple of times, so and so, why didn't you complete X? But X got done. And then once we kind of moved more on the online piece, then that then pulled everybody through kind of at the pace, and that was good. I think that the shift to the online was good. It was good. It was I think it was both were great, but I think the shift to the online was good.
The online in high school, those theological discussions they have, those discussions about literature, as a parent sitting back and hearing them, it's with their classmates online. It was like, this is amazing.
Yeah, I find that, I mean, your experience there of kind of, especially when they're younger, kind of taking things at their own pace, and then as ramping up and then realizing, okay, you've got to do these specific things. I mean, that seems so natural. I mean, because everybody does learn at a different pace and at a different way. Who cares if this one learns to read when he's 4 and this one learns to read when he's 6 or 7 or whatever. I mean, you've got the whole trajectory, and it seems like because of kind of we forget often, or at least people think it just needs to be like the brick and mortar school where everybody based on age is stuck into a room together, and there's if you can't do it, you're just the dumb kid, and you're going to be labeled as that for the rest of your life. And if you're doing well, then you're the smart kid, and that's your label for the rest of your high school career too. Homeschooling has always just seemed like it breaks that in the right way, So I mean, I'm happy to hear that worked that way for you too. But
Yeah, it's we had elder care a good bit when the kids were going through school too, with Dee Dee's folks and then my mom. And so, with 3 grandparents, you wouldn't go too long before somebody had to go to the doctor, right? And all of a sudden, whatever was supposed to happen at 11 a.m. ain't happening because everyone's going to the doctor until grandma or grandpa comes back. And so you have to be able to kind of work with that, right? But it's cool because, the kids grow up learning life happens, right? It's not just about going off to here and doing this thing. Like, you got to get your school done and your work done and take care of people along with it. I think that's just a great learning for them to be able to do. Another cool thing about homeschooling is kids by naturally have to interact with people of different ages, right? Like, they're not in a group of people that's their own age for all those years. So I think you do become more comfortable interacting with younger kids and taking care of the younger kids, and also older people, older kids. I think that's a real life skill that you pick up when you have this kind of an environment. And I think you just have to be good with some days you're not going to get everything done you wanted to. And that can sometimes freak me out because I'm a big to-do list, check the to-do list thing off. But I was amazed at how, Dee would work a day or a week and, and be able to weave in and out of everything else that happened and be able to continue to make progress. And I think, learning how to do that from a young age, I think is also just a life skill. And I think it's manifested in our kids. And, as they got out of high school into college or now into their professional careers, you can see kind of how that, they lean on that. They don't know they lean on it, but you can see it in how they live their lives and do their work.
We've always said you need a schedule first in order to be flexible from the schedule. You can't be flexible from chaos. That doesn't make sense. But getting back to what he was saying about elder care, I think that was worked so beautifully in our life, and God has been very good. We had 2 properties, and our both sets of parents were living next door to us. So at 3:00, I would take the kids over to see the 2 grandmothers who had very strong political opinions. And so we would sit there, listen to what they heard that day on the news. And luckily they agreed with everything, but they were very, energetic about their opinions. And then we'd pray the rosary together. And it was just so beautiful. And then as they got ill, each of them in their turn, Catherine especially was able to be at the hospital at bedside with my mother, and getting her work done when she could. But the most important thing was that she was there next to grandma holding her hand. And then my second daughter was able to be there in a very special way for my husband's mother. And in the meantime, the boys were always there with Charlie's mom, it was absolutely beautiful. It was absolutely beautiful that if grandma needed them, everything else was put aside and they could go help the grandparents. This is funny. They don't do it anymore at a lot of Catholic schools, but my boys would serve the morning mass at the cathedral in Hartford. And then they were on call for funerals at the cathedral. And you can't do that if they're going to public school. And a lot of Catholic schools don't allow them to do that anymore. So nobody's serving funeral masses. And my boys get together and talk about some of the eulogies that they heard, and some of the funeral masses they were at where no one attended except the altar servers and the priest. And so those are life lessons that you never go into homeschooling thinking, oh, well, I'm going to do this because this. That just is a glorious result of being available.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Boys, you're saying that. It again just reminds me of the importance of the family, which you've talked about multiple times. But homeschooling, just as you're saying, lends itself perfectly to building up that natural unit that you have of family and, kind of extended family. And as you're talking about that, it just stands out how much the other systems break that apart, whether, like you're saying, it's because they can't go serve, they can't spend time with the grandparents, or they're spending all of their time with people their same age, and makes it harder to learn about and love their brothers and sisters, their parents, their grandparents. And yeah, I'm a big homeschooling fan, but what you're saying here just to me is emphasizing how important it is to kind of maintain that unit, and how hard it's occurring to me how hard it is to maintain that if you're not homeschooling. I mean, what a terrific effort you're going to have to put in to maintain that if you can't.
Yeah, and even just with something as simple as homework that ends up being busy work for the child who's already mastered the subject. We made a commitment to the kids. We are not going to waste your time. I'm like, once you master this and you show me you master this, we're moving on. But we just don't waste time. And I'm not going to keep my child from the sunshine, if they have already mastered a subject.
Well, that's what it's all. I mean, I love it because that's what this is all about. The learning is about this love of learning and coming to knowledge, and as you said, or properly ordered toward our faith and to coming to know and understand God and His creation, and that menial sort of like beating a kid down who's already got it just drives that out of them. If it's like, why would I work hard? Why would I love this? Because it's just going to, even if I get it right away, it's just going to be sit there for another hour and go through. I mean, it's miserable, so that's the spirit of learning right there is being upheld.
Yeah, one of the other benefits we saw is that some of the special interests that really gave the kids an opportunity for them to pursue because of the flexibility. So maybe the most obvious example is our youngest son, John, who decided in seventh, eighth grade that he wanted to get into performance arts, wanted to be a dancer. And ultimately, when he was in high school, was at a conservatory here in Connecticut where I think it was about 38 to 40 hours a week of dance time. And
classical ballet.
Yeah, Monday through Saturday, every day for a good part of the day. And so he had to do with school too. So obviously the kid worked really hard. But that's the kind of thing where I think it would be really hard if you were in a situation where you were either in parochial school or public school where you were kind of constrained to the classroom. Our other kids, another one's very much got involved in music, singing, songwriting. And again, that's something where he had the flexibility to do things because of this situation that would have been hard to do. Now, on the downside, like one of the things that was a downside is our boys really wanted to be part of organized sports. And so when they got older, the way the athletic conferences are here where we live, you're not allowed to participate in the school sports unless you're actually enrolled as a student. So I think there's if you're to ask them kind of a disappointment, I think that being able to participate football and some of the other stuff that they could have done with it would be something they really wanted to do. Now, you make up for it. For example, there were rugby clubs in the area, so the boys they couldn't play football, but they could play in rugby clubs and things like that. But yeah, that flexibility, I think they would all say was a benefit to them.
They all play instruments. We didn't really have video games in the house, so they really didn't know any better. They actually, as punishment, we'd have to take away them practicing the piano. You cannot practice the piano today because you did this wrong. That's how they had no idea. So they all played piano from the age of 4, and then at 10 they could decide on what instrument they wanted. And that has also been a real blessing, because when they get together, they can, it's great to hear them jam. But it also became a form of a way they could raise money for college. So each of them became, except John, I think, they all taught either voice or piano or guitar or whatever their instrument was, in order to make money as well. But again, the flexibility allowed them to have that pursue those musical instruments. One Lorraine actually became a professional organist and went on to Notre Dame to get her master's in choral conducting. So
and got a scholarship at Holy Cross as part of the music. So that was the other thing is in terms of the benefit to Kolbe, all of our kids did really well in terms of scholarships, academic or other kinds of performance scholarships. So again, the teachers, you guys saved me a lot of money. So thank you for that. On the downside, we've been sitting here glorifying, the homeschooling in so many ways it really is. But I think, on the downside, it is a lot of work, right? Like it's an unbelievable amount of work. It's like, I remember when Dee-Dee got pregnant with our first, my Uncle George laughed at me and said, "Well, there goes your free time." And I had no idea what he meant. That was just back when, the first baby was born, which obviously takes all of your free time away. But, when you're in full homeschool mode with a bunch of kids, you're on the go, right? And the go could be anything from, teaching them something to doing the laundry to doing the dish, like whatever it takes just to make the family move from one day to the other. One of the funny stories I was telling somebody is we moved here to Connecticut. We got one of those new high efficiency washers that just came out at the time, to save water. And the darn thing took like 2 hours to run a wash. And so when you have 5 kids and you're constrained to a 2-hour wash for each load, that you get a backlog really quick. And so the boys and I periodically would have to run to the local laundromat with like 7 baskets of clothes and just clear the backlog. So the business, and then with that, the other thing you need to complement what Kolbe offers, or any, curriculum offers, you need to be able to have, fun and activities outside of the academic. My wife led a group that had, roughly 85 families here in Connecticut and New York that got together every week to do different kinds of home, activities, from theater to service, you can name it, but organizing all of that. And it was like, I would say, for every activity, it took a heroic parent, somebody who's going to say, "I'm willing to make sure this particular thing, goes off well." And so you pile the home stuff and the academic stuff and then the activities, and it is a bit busy. And so, and that's probably when I meant to the point about, knowing your first principles. If you get into it and you're not quite sure why you do it, then it could get hard and you could start to wonder whether it's worth it. So I think having clarity of thought, when it gets hard, I think is good to kind of power through some of those days.
Yeah. But what you're emphasizing, the most important thing once you get married is the raising of your relationship together, but the raising and the education of those children. So the example that you're putting there of the work and giving up the free time is really setting an example for your children to see this is the most important thing. The family, the raising this relationship, getting them ready to be able to go out into the world and do the wonderful things that they're doing, that's priority number one. So I think it sets that great example for the kids.
Yeah, I really have a lot of admiration for the value you place on your family life, and including the extended family and the integration of the school into life in general, and showing the kids how how life is, I'm sure their transition to adulthood, as you've spoken about, both on the academic and professional side, but on the living day to day, like in their own households or wherever they are at the time, just that slow preparation, the slow and steady, so that it wasn't such just out of nowhere. How do I even do this or that? And they have some sense of that. And also the relationships that you cultivate among your family members and the service and everything. And I really like what you said about needing to have structure in order to be flexible. I wondered if you'd say a bit more about what your structure looked like, however broadly or in detail you would like to say that, how you kind of set the tone for this is our structure. And then once we have this down, then we can be flexible as we need to.
Well, it changes every year because every child is a different age the next year.
Yeah.
And so there are different strengths, weaknesses, there's different levels of maturity, there's different things they're going through as just individuals and their life experiences. Our structure was a 4-day work week. And then we created the homeschooling group that would meet on Fridays, predominantly on Fridays. So it would be an entire day with the other families doing whatever our structures were. Our homeschooling group was it is still in existence, but it's not a co-op and it's not curriculum based. It is all about extracurriculars. Charlie and I came from backgrounds where we were both very involved in high school, on sports, on academic, the extracurricular activities from yearbook to student council. We felt it was really important to be able to provide our children with opportunities to learn what their strengths and weaknesses are, learn how to be followers as well as learn how to be leaders. And you can't do that with just your family. And so we made sure that Fridays were set aside for those type of extracurricular activities, which we developed over time. But the 4 days of academics was always, as we would get to daily mass and the boys would serve, and everyone had their own space or shared space for their work. We had a hot breakfast and a hot lunch together. And when they were younger, we did I love the Catholic readers. I don't know if it's still part of the curriculum, but I love the Catholic readers. But, part of the curriculum was you had to write out all these answers to your Catholic reader. That can be very difficult for people who struggle with hand, one of my children would actually rip paper because she was so tense writing. So it wasn't really serving the purpose of answering a question about the subject matter because she was so tense about the handwriting being perfect. And so we started doing presentations at lunch. So everybody would have their turn standing up, learning how to recite or to read in public. And we would hear from their Catholic reader. And then we would ask questions. And then the whole group would answer and enjoy. And when we weren't doing that, we had reading time. So we'd be reading the classics like Little Women when the kids were from age like an infant in my arms to up to 10 years old. The definition of a classic is that it can be read to anyone and you get some every time that's my definition. You can get something different out of it every time you hear it. And so Little Women was just one example of a book that you can read out loud and do a couple chapters after lunch and get back to work. But then we also feel like we felt it was very necessary that they get outside regularly, and nothing will do that quicker than getting goats that have to be milked twice a day.
Oh, yeah.
And so we had goats that Catherine would lead all the kids up to the goat field at 6 a.m. And then at 6 p.m, they had to be milked. And then there were unit studies on what the gut of a goat looks like. And what do we do with the goat milk? Learning about how to pasteurize it. And, so when you live on property where you can have gardens and you can have chickens and goats, the day goes by very quickly. So when you after mass and the hot breakfast, a good conversation, the academics that you have to get through, and the animals, your day is
That's
really
full day.
It's a full day. But in between that is also the music lessons. We were very blessed to be one of the grandparents gave us music lessons for the children, provided that financially for us. We couldn't have done it otherwise. And between that and being with the grandparents at 3 and then milking the goats at 6 and pasteurizing the milk and tending the gardens and the chickens. Then the girls were involved with and Charlie were involved in Civil Air Patrol. And so they would also be learning about aircraft 2 nights a week. And I'm not sure if that's really, I guess that is a rhythm. There was definitely a rhythm. Charlie traveled most of the week. And so it was me and the kids for most of, Monday through Thursday.
Okay.
And then Friday we had a Dorothée, which is our homeschool group, which, they held the proms, the ballroom dance classes, the brown bag lunches. It was built, the backbone of that group is built on service. So there was brown bag lunches that would be provided to the homeless shelters once a month. We've been providing that for 20 years now. 100 to 250 sandwiches that the kids all line up to make. And it's beautiful because it's all ages, right? It's all the kids do it. That's assembly line, but it's the youngest little kids coloring the brown paper bags to the oldest kids, putting the bologna on the sandwiches and stuffing the bags and making sure they have 8 items or whatever. It's a beautiful thing to see. And what's better than that kind of service? And then at 3 o'clock on Fridays, they'd always gather for the rosary. So it's every age leading. And when you say who'd like to lead the rosary, you've got a senior leading the first mystery, and you've got a 8-year-old leading, the next decade. I mean, it's just really special when you have people that can live the liturgical year with you, and it's not a foreign language. When the liturgical year is your primary language, it really makes a difference.
That's beautiful.
And I'm curious if you're traveling a lot, Charlie, what sort of challenges that was to kind of keep. I mean, I think homeschooling would probably be a better solution to rather than multiple schedules. But was that a challenge to?
I think it just proved how tough my wife is, right? I mean, there were days when I wasn't here and she was here, and the roof leaked, and so and so broke their ankle, and grandma got sick, and the dog had an accident in the house, pick all those things, right? And the best I could do is give her a go get him, Dee-Dee. I'm here for you. So I think it, if anything else, it proved how tough of a person and resilient she is. It just, just the way to work that, right? So you pick careers, sometimes the implications of them, you have to get on the road a good bit. And that's kind of where I ended up. But it's usually, I guess, as the kids got older, I was home on Fridays over the weekend and, contribute and do what I can. Now, the funny thing is I used to try to be the math tutor, and, I had an engineering background in school, and I'm not that actually good at math anymore, but there's certain ways I just like to think. And so, the kids, if you would ask them, they would say, yeah, Dad always made us cry when he tried to teach us because we could never get the math problems done as fast or as the way I wanted it to.
But Charlie was the backbone of the faith in the household. So he would take them to confession every Saturday at 3 o'clock. It was dad time, and they'd all pile in the car, go to confession, and then go get smoothies afterwards. And Charlie also praised the divine office, and so they knew that wherever Dad was, if they got up early enough, they could pray here and know their dad was praying somewhere else at that time. And it's really, that's carried through to college too. The kids know, Dad's faith is so strong. He's the guy that we go to with questions about the faith. He's just the backbone. And he travels, and it's a sacrifice for the family so that we can do what we were doing. And they knew that.
Beautiful. So many gifts.
Yeah, not much to go with that.
Well, that's beautiful. It's so inspiring, really. And what a gift to give to them at the time, and also for them to carry forth into their lives that they are living now.
Oh, and Charlie used to be the volunteer sacristan on Sundays down at the shrine. Do you remember that? And so little Charlie and John would go down and help him open up the church, get the church ready, and do everything involved with getting the church ready and the mass ready before Sunday masses. Wow, that was huge.
Yeah, it was another avenue for them to enter into the celebration of the liturgy as well.
Yeah, my old man was never one. He owned his he owned his own business. He was not much one to have many hobbies, right? So dad's hobby was coming home, cutting the grass, that kind of stuff. And so unfortunately, we're kind of transitioned down to me. So I don't fish, I don't golf, I don't hunt. I'm horrible with a hammer. So, the boys and I and the girls and I, when we wanted to do stuff, we had to kind of, it was all in the vein of either house chores or then going somewhere fun. So
Well, I think it's a good point for homeschooling dads out there as well, though your situation. I've read studies that say that, the best chance your children have of keeping their faith is the father being firm and open in his faith, that sign, even I mean, who knows about the studies or whatever, but even more than when both are faithful, if the husband is faithful and the children have a great chance of being successful. So that's something for our fathers to keep in mind, that has to be a priority for us here as fathers in general, but especially homeschooling dads. But
I think true. I mean, I've seen those studies too, but all I have is like my own life experience and kind of the experience of my friends, right? So it's not a huge set of data points, but you know, my intuition says that a mother's faith kind of holds the family together. But I think when the kids see that it's not only the mother but the father that has it strengthens the opportunity. It strengthens the transmission. Like at that point, mom and dad both take this seriously. It's got to be something I take seriously. And I think for the families I know, a lot of families I know where you have both parents that are, strongly believe, I think the opportunity to transmit seems like it happens pretty naturally. And for families where one parent doesn't, then I think it's harder on the kids, right? Like, mom thinks something, dad thinks something else. Who do I believe? Right? Just that has to be hard. That has to be hard.
yeah. And I know for years for me, I was able to kind of form a bond with some of my children because we are fortunate to live within walking distance of a church that had 6:30 mass every morning. And so while we were having young kids, the youngest and my wife could sleep in with the baby, but then all of the rest of us would walk over to mass. And so that just every morning getting up at 6 and getting everybody together and getting over there, it really kind of connected us in a way that's held up through the years. So I can see that.
I think also children can see the choices that the parents make when, in addition to the education, it's what is the home like? What are the books that you have on your bookshelf? When is the TV ever on or not on? And do you ever sacrifice your child's, what your child is seeing because you really want to watch something or you really want to do something? Charlie, was a big ball fan, but he really, with traveling, if he spent all his time watching football on the weekends, there would be no time for the children. So he made a big sacrifice and was basically just totally present when he was home for those children. And I think that the children feel that.
Yeah, definitely. Well, would you say a bit about the end of your homeschooling chapter after since the late 90s of you homeschooling, when that came to an end? What was that like as that was approaching? Was there anything that you did to sort of begin a transition to a different chapter? Just anything relating to when that chapter was ending?
Well, I am still involved in the homeschool group again is really still very active and actually larger than ever and very big in theater. And so I'm still the producer of the theater parts, even though I've aged out of having children in it. Now my oldest daughter has a child and she's participating in the homeschool group with her child. And Dolores is part of the directing team for that homeschool group. And my third daughter is also attending that homeschool group. So I'm still connected, but I'm the grandma, in the situation. And Charlie and I used to run the marriage encounter for 10 years for one of the deaneries here. And we really like working together, doing something for the faith. We're both getting older and we're hoping that maybe in his retirement, we can build up a Catholic shop that we started on the property. So
Yeah. So
We've kept very busy. And what we want is to have all the classical reading available to everybody within that,
so so
under that roof.
when John was like in his junior year, Cole, we wrapping that up. We started having conversations about what's next, and um, I think it kind of started to orbit around maybe we never owned a business before, so Dee-Dee started a store, an online and gift store, Catholic gift store, and we're in our fifth year, and I think that's been a phenomenal transition because the idea was, well, let's start, let's see where it goes, and see where the good Lord takes it. So she's a very high energy person, and a lot of the energy that used to go into the homeschool had to go somewhere, and so it's a lot of it's now kind of into that store, which is doing really well. It's meeting, it's an opportunity to kind of serve people in a different way. And it's been a lot of fun to learn what it's like to have a business, run one, the challenges of it, meet different people. So you've got that plus the support, continue to support the homeschooling group, like she says, through the theater piece, and our friends, probably for as long as we live, our closest friends are going to be the parents we homeschooled with, right? So we're never far from the homeschoolers because those are our friends, will always be our friends. So we see them all the time.
And what we're trying to do with the shop also is to promote homeschooling, but not only to promote homeschooling by having all of the fantastic reading and classical reading and materials that homeschoolers might need, but also to kind of have those materials available to people who don't think that they can homeschool. So we have events that promote homeschooling. Just come here from this panel of 10 people who are homeschoolers or alumni or whatever, and come ask questions. Probably 5 years ago, I would have still been saying homeschooling's not for everybody. It's not, everybody's got to, figure out what's good for them. Today, I would say run, don't walk away from public schools. Whatever else you do, don't put your kids in public school, even if you choose a Catholic school option or a private school option, but really consider homeschooling because even if you just get your child to mass every day and have a really quality bookshelf, it's better than what is what they're facing in the public school system. Did that answer your question?
Yes. And I love hearing about your new chapter, what you're up to these days. Your shop, it's called the Domestic Monastery.
Oh, you already know about it. The Domestic Monastery.
I found it. Yep. So we'll include a link to that in our show notes, the Domestic Monastery shop. It's beautiful and it looks neat. So when you are encouraging, and that's probably a very weak word, when you are encouraging folks to consider homeschooling who haven't yet, and if they answer you back, like, how could I ever do that? How do you like to respond to that?
Well, I think that the trick is not to bring up the subject yourself, but have them ask you, how did you get here? How did because my kids are through the shop all the time and so they're like, and what's really neat is there's so many young people alive, burning with the faith in this area. And it's just amazing to see their energy. So, you think you're doing something like, starting gift shops so that there could be things available for other people. And, oh, what a good person you are, and patting yourself on the back. And you come to realize, oh my goodness, I needed this so much. I needed to see this energy. I needed to know that there were other 20 to 40-year-olds who were alive with the faith for the sake of my children, because these are my children's peers. And I'm like, this is fantastic. We're very fortunate to have Focus in the area, and we have other young Catholic group, like adult groups. It's just beautiful to see. But when they start asking questions, like these kids end up being the ones that are, okay, now they're getting married, now they're having children. Even in the past 5 years, we've seen kids, and they're like, so what's going on here? Because we have a lot of homeschooling events on the property. We have the annual musical here, and we have, we just have a lot of things. We support Catholic artists in the shop. And so they're like, where did this start? And I have Kolbe's reading list for sale at the shop. And then why? What is this? And it's nice when they initiate the conversation, then you can go hog wild on the answers. It's like, well, have you ever heard of this? And I always say, if you don't do anything else, you get this reading list. Because what I did initially for my children is I got them each a copy of the Kolbe reading list. And I told them, as you read these, you put 5 stars next to it and you color in however many stars you think that book deserves. And so they each have their own book with all of, with these stars next to the book. And that was considered, you don't read Harry Potter which is book candy. It's not bad to me, but it's just book candy, we call it, until this Kolbe list. This is meat and potatoes. You finish that. And the young parents really grasp onto that. Once they see that and they see it sitting next to the Ignatian Education in the Home pamphlet that I also have from Kolbe, then they're like, oh, what's that? And then but it means so much more when it's sparked by them.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'd encourage people to talk to 5 to 10 families because I've rarely met a homeschooling family that has the same story as another. Everyone's got their own reasons for doing it, methods for doing it, how they get over whatever hurdle that is that someone's worried about. So, I can't believe that, everyone in the world has been created to homeschool. I don't think that's true, but I think a lot of the fears or objections that people might have, if you talk to 10 families, you'll figure out how they worked around it. Like, across the 10, you'll meet enough of who you are to then decide. That would be my advice.
Yeah, I always say, I start by saying homeschooling is not the panacea for all of life's ills. And your children will face many of the same problems that any other child will face. But perhaps they'll have a community that supports them in a different way. And when they are struggling, they turn to our Lord and just instead of to other things.
Beautiful. Do you have any final thoughts or words of wisdom you'd like to leave with us?
I just found it for the people who are considering homeschooling. I've seen so many families over the years. We've been homeschooled, obviously, for like 20 some odd years. The people who seem the most at peace are the ones who have kind of taken on a curriculum and stuck with it rather than jump, 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 jump. I see people just jumping and then, oh my gosh, they lose their mind trying to figure out and get all of the paperwork ready and one of the beautiful things Kolbe gave me was the peace of mind that my children will have a diploma when they come out. And I know that they have done this work and the work is there and that, I've got support there from the teachers helping me get this material together so that when it comes time to graduate, they have what they need to go to a good college, and they feel comfortable because you want your children to be at peace. You want to be at peace. There is enough challenge to homeschooling without making it harder on yourself by jumping curriculums every 2 years. That's just something I've seen with.
Yeah, and when I don't know when I said when the kids go off to college, I give them a couple pieces of advice, and one of them is never eat alone. If you need friends. College is hard, and college without friends is unbelievably hard. And the reason I brought that up is I think homeschooling is a bit like that. Like you need friends to try to be a homeschooler and do it all on your own without community around you is super hard. So I think if you're thinking about it, then it's worth the diligence to find people in your area that do it and talk to them. And if you're started into it, I think it's worth your time to find people that are doing it because I think that community makes all the difference. I mean, it's great just to see your kids flourish, and the good days are good. There's challenging days too, but I think it's good to have friends when you do it. And we've been so incredibly blessed. We've got just some great friends that did it with us, and that's just been so much worth it.
I think I would just add one more thing is that what Kolbe has to offer, the curriculum's amazing. But and I'm not just saying this because my daughter is one of your teachers. I would have said this before she was a teacher. But I think the way they go about selecting and training their teachers is really wonderful and really, really important, because those are the adults that are really having an effect on your children. There are people that have touched my children's lives in ways that are, teachers are really powerful for these children. So if you have the resources to be able to do the Kolbe online, which I 100% recommend, you have to know that Kolbe is putting a lot of energy into choosing the right person to put before your child, and it shows.
So you all have put a lot into what has turned out beautifully, thanks in large part to your work and the graces that have come along that you've cooperated with. Well, we sure enjoy visiting with Mihaliaks at any opportunity we get. We will list links in our show notes to the conversations we've had with your son, Charlie, and your daughter, Dolores, that we've mentioned already, and the link to your shop and so forth. So check the show notes for that. And thanks again for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Subscribe to the Kolbecast on your favorite podcast app so that you don't miss an episode. And let us know how we're doing by leaving a rating or a review. And as always, feel free to email us at podcast@kolbe.org.
Mary, our Mother, pray for us. St. Maximilian Kolbe, St. Ignatius of Loyola, holy saints and angels, pray for us. Ad maiorem Dei gloriam.